what does purpose mean? A lot of people think about the world's ending, we're losing resources and things like that. Purpose, when generally related to a goal, can be great, and everybody's purpose is different. For me, it was around finding my purpose to enable the most social impact. A lot of the issues exist because of lack of access to finances, right? Basically, poverty creates the environment where a lot of things happen. My life has always been about what can I do to enable impact by myself through my products and through others and through the companies I work with. And if you look at that multiple lenses, I'm always looking for ways to improve in all of these areas. It's not just for companies or teams, it's individuals too. And individuals also tend to see somebody do something and you feel like, oh, that's working, I should do that too. Somebody's going to like a well-renowned university. It's natural, and then ended up landing a great job. Then you think, oh, going through that university is going to help you land that job. But what you miss is that actually you don't know what else they've done. You don't know if they've actually done additional learning, and maybe the university that they went to actually delayed their success. You don't know that. And the whole thing saying is, when you look at competition, you can observe because you want to be conscious. But if you focus on competition to gain product insights, that's actually going to be a failure. But I've always been this person who feels like life is too short, life is running out. I'm also a cancer survivor of about 10 plus years now, and that actually gives this additional sense of urgency for some reason. And I'm a cancer survivor with much higher chances of cancer recurring and all of that. So there's only so much I can do as myself. There's only so much I can do through my product. There's only so much I can do through my company. But there's so much more I can do by amplifying others.
What's going on, people? My name is Sid, and welcome back to another episode of Lucid. In this episode, I'm talking to Prashanthi Ravanarappu, who is a product director at PayPal and has spent 16 years honing her craft in product management. We talk about what drives her to be the best at what she does, her purpose, and how she thinks about customer discovery and building products. Watch this episode at 1.5x for a better viewing experience.
आज की ताज़ा खबर। बेंगलुरु में रहने वाले लू और अमेरिका में रहने वाले सिड आपसे कुछ बात करना चाहते हैं। संगीतकार राजेश के साथ आपका स्वागत है लूसिड में।
Yes. And I think Prashanti, to start off this podcast, I think one of the very curious questions I have is, you have a really successful career, you're a mom, you have a family to run, and you still make time to, do stuff of your own interest, your own ambition. Like my main question would be what is that drive within you to start all this, to do so much, what drives you to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and you're right, there's only limited time in the day. My story is probably not unique, but I've always been this person who feels like life is too short, life is running out. And then I'm also a cancer survivor of about 10 plus years now. And that actually gives this additional sense of urgency for some reason. And I'm a cancer survivor with much higher chances of cancer recurring and all of that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But meanwhile, I have this sense of I need to do more. I need to do more for others and things like that. And then look, life is all about prioritization, right? There's only a limited time. While perception might be that I'm all doing all of these great things, I'm also not doing a lot of things, right? I don't focus a lot on my my health, for example, right? Like taking a walk every day or things like that. I don't prioritize having fun too much because this is so much fun for me. So it's all about prioritization and balance. So for me, my life has always been about what can I do to enable impact by myself through my products and through others and through the companies I work with. And if you look at that multiple lenses, I'm always looking for ways to improve in all of these areas. So there's only so much I can do as myself. There's only so much I can do through my product. There's only so much I can do through my company. But there's so much more I can do by amplifying others. because I feel like it's like you're planting seeds. Some seeds are going to be these mighty oak trees, some might not. My job is not to worry about whether the seed's going to be an oak tree or not. My job is to keep planting those
Right.
seeds. So I make time because it gives me a lot of joy in seeing these plants grow. I don't know if the analogy works, but that's my drive. And the last thing I'll say is there's a big difference between ambition and drive too. Like I'm very driven, and I'm by drive. What it means is I want to be better than myself. I want to be better than yesterday. I want to do better than yesterday, and then I want to help more people think about it the same way as well. So that drive also helps, and all of my sports training growing up just gives me, I guess, a lot more energy and a lot more fuel that helps me keep going. And this does not take away time from my kids. Like I've never missed my son's basketball game ever, except the one time when I got COVID. Right? I will always take them wherever they need to do to help them succeed in their life. So it's all about prioritization and
Right.
balance.
I feel like as you speak about this, and you're balancing your personal life, your professional life, and your interests. I feel like you're the kind of person who's trying to be the most efficient self. Try to spend like
Oh,
each minute of your day making sure that you're investing it into something you value.
yes.
But how do you do that? Because generally, everyone speaks about efficiency, optimizing their day, but sometimes people do it for like say 5 days, 7 days, or even for a day, and then they stop doing. How do you keep doing it consistently?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying yes, that's totally me, and I'll close by talking about why that's actually not good too. So I'm a high productivity, high efficiency person. Like, I mean, you talk about productivity hacks, you got me hooked,
Right.
right? I'm always looking to optimize my life. For example, if I have to walk my dog, it means I have to listen to a podcast. I can't just walk thinking and enjoying and all of that. It also puts a lot of pressure on my husband, for example, because I'm always being efficient, things like that. But for me, the way I am able to keep up is first, of course, like careful planning and being purposeful, right? I take the last week of the year off to just think about what my goals are for the next year. And goals not as in I want to do X, Y, Z, but it's all about working backwards from what my end of life is going to be. Like when I die, what are people going to say about me? And what are my family, friends are going to think about me, and so on. What mark did I leave on them and the world? I have my eulogy written, so it's all about thinking about how does my next year contribute to my
Right.
eulogy. Am I on the right track? Am I doing things this year? Did I do things that don't align with my values and don't align with my eulogy? Right? So thinking about that and then translating that into, okay, here are the things that I want to do next year. And I create a mind map, and the mind map covers every aspect of my life. It's my personal life, financial life, work life, everything. And then thinking about how am I going to be as a person, as a wife, as a mom, as a friend, and then as a leader, as a community member, as a product thought leader, all of that, and it takes a lot of time to think. So I take the whole week just to reflect on the year and think about that. And then I break it down into like 13-week journeys. And why 13 weeks? There's a whole story about two teams that went to South Pole, I think, right? And one of the team perishes and the others doesn't. And the key difference is consistency. The team that succeeds is because they're consistently doing things every day in the same amount. Every day, 6 hours or 8 hours, they're just trekking, they're stopping and resting. But the other team, when it's more sunny, they would go 13 hours. When it's cold, they would rest up. That actually made them do a lot of mistakes, and that whole team perished. So that 13 weeks, I translate these yearly goals into 13-week marches. And the 13 weeks too, and now every week I'm evaluating. Am I working towards that 13-week march? How is that connecting to the annual plans and things like that? And always like adjusting my daily tasks to the weekly goals and so on. There are days when I feel like I've done a lot, but I haven't achieved anything. Or let's say I ended up watching a Netflix show, I'm feeling guilty. It always has to also go back to amplifying your toolkit by having gratitude journals, success journals, things like that, where I'm taking note of, like yesterday, I was feeling like, what did I do last week? I don't think my week was
Right.
productive. And I reflected on why. And why? Because right now my husband's traveling, which means I have a little bit more free time. So the free time made me feel like I didn't do much. But when I actually sat down, I wrote down all the things I've achieved last week. I was shocked by how much I did. So it's also making sure you have these reinforcing techniques to help you stay grounded. Those are some of the techniques that work for me to be highly productive. But at the same time, I'm adding some more things to my toolkit. Like, for example, resting. I've added one more thing of actually adding a cap, which means, because your work fills the time you have. And let's say you end up having an hour. Highly productive people think that you should use the 1 hour on
Right.
doing things. But over the last year, I've started practicing just being and not doing all the time, which means taking time with my notebook only and thinking and writing, or actually walking the dog without any podcast and things like that. So I'm adding those ingredients. I'm adding the max thing of I'm only going to work a max of 60 hours a week,
Right.
right? And so that means now it frees up the 40 hours of work I was doing to do things, other things that are not directly related to it. So there are techniques like that that I have to add so that I'm living my life whole and actually realizing this rat race is not going to never
Right. Yeah.
end. We have to balance, and actually these rest and these techniques are helping me be more effective when I'm actually doing the work that I need to do.
Right, yeah. I think that one point where you mentioned about capping, like I've realized that a lot over the past year, especially doing grad school and finding jobs and stuff. Previously, I thought like, hey, like I just have like 12 hours a day and I have to max out my 12 hours. But then I realized like I
Yeah,
get fatigued and I can't think properly, and
that's
that's when I
right.
realized I need to give myself some time, some free time for my brain to rest as well.
That's
So
right.
yeah, definitely.
That's right. That's right. So our goal shouldn't be people who are running two
Right.
companies and working 100 hours a week. They shouldn't be the ideal. I think we should have a more balance. Look, we cannot also dictate to each to their own. Everybody has to go through their own journey. We can say just because a technique works for me or works for you, it should be working for everybody. The biggest, I guess, thing we can do for ourselves is to figure out what works for us,
Mm.
right? And then be comfortable with who you are. Don't get distracted by this person who's doing 10 hours more than
Right.
you or who's resting 10 hours more than you. You be you and be confident that your being you is actually going to help you go
Mm.
further.
Right. True, true. And I think the other interesting part that I really found about you is over the course of last semester at Duke, we've had a management class where all of us had to define like our purpose, our leadership philosophy, and that was really like it opened my perspective a lot because I had to reflect on my life, my values, my childhood, and to come out with like that leadership philosophy, which I can inspire people when I lead a team. And like I've seen like a lot of your LinkedIn posts where you also promote the same. And I wanted to know from you, like, how has like defining a purpose in your life for yourself impacted like the way you live,
Yeah,
the things you
yeah.
do?
Yeah, that's right. And so at that time, I spent a lot of time like reflecting and actually going deep into like what does purpose mean. Everybody feels it differently. For everybody, it's a
Right.
different thing. I spent a lot of time, and I actually read a couple of books that helped me. One was Abundance, and Abundance was a great book talking about how the world is actually abundant. A lot of people think about the world's ending, we're losing resources, and things like that. Actually, Abundance showed about the potential, positive potential. And then there was the
Right.
other one about business model you, like actually thinking about applying the business model to yourself and thinking about your strengths and all of that and how it fits in. So, and then I spend a lot of time also in the homes of customers, going deeper into reading about many things because purpose, when generally related to a goal, can be great, and everybody's purpose is different. For me, it was around finding my purpose to enable the most social impact. And social impact could be about ending world hunger, ending global poverty. It could be about educating people. Like it could be ending crime. It could be ending trafficking. So after spending a lot of time thinking, it really boiled down to really two things for me. And the main one was about this realization that a lot of the issues exist because of lack of access to finances, right? Basically, poverty creates or creates the environment where a lot of things happen, right? People fall into the wrong businesses, or they fall victim to payday lending. Like all of those things happen because of poverty, and poverty could be solved through two things. One is education. Like, can you help people be more educated, or give them the tools to either get an education to get a job, or get the skills to start a business, right? It could be that. And the second thing was really around financial services. And I reflected on now applying myself and say, well, can I do anything in education space? I realized not really. Given my background, financial services seemed like the natural next step, which is where I started honing into, okay, I think how can I leverage my strengths to really amplify financial services in a way that we can improve financial wellness for people. Yeah, I would love to say I can put a dent on global poverty, but that will need a lot more than me, a lot more people and organizations to do. But I can do my best. And once I realized that, then aligning my career to that has been much easier. Like you can apply the lens for every job you do and everything you do towards that. That's how I found. Now, there are also different schools of thought. There's another school of thought that says, and Naval Ravikant also talked about this, which is, look, we're all blips in the universe, right? Even the biggest, most purposeful people from a century ago, we barely remember. So then are we tricking ourselves by saying, oh, we have a massive purpose and all of that? And I thought about that quite a bit too. And I realized that's fair, right? Yes, no matter what I do, after I die, maybe in 10 years, people will forget, or maybe they forget me the next day, but that's okay. Did I lead my life in a way that works for me by thinking about a purpose? And I settled, yeah, maybe purpose doesn't make a difference in the grand scheme of things, but it does make a difference for me and how I approach my life. It makes a difference in people around me and the people I impact. So I settled with, what, people can say whatever they want. For me, being purposeful is very important. And that's how I've been. And that's helped me
Right.
over the
That's very
years.
fascinating. And one question I have there is, for me especially, when I was 4 years ago compared to now, like I think my thought processes have changed, my values have changed. I guess I've gained additional values, my perspectives have changed. So like the purpose I've defined for myself now might change, like say 5 to 10 years from now. So the purpose you've defined for yourself now,
Yeah.
like was it the same from the beginning? Did it change? How was it like for you?
Yeah. Great question. And actually, that's one of the myths, that purpose needs to be one. There are a few myths, right? There's one is purpose is one, it'll never change. The second one is going to be it's a big world changing purpose. It doesn't have to be. Like all of these are myths. And actually, there's an HBR book
Right.
also, like Finding Your Purpose or Crafting Your Purpose, I think is the name of the book, that talks about that too. My purpose has evolved.
Oh,
The underlying ingredients haven't evolved, but it has evolved. Like, when I first, defined or crafted my purpose, it was really about putting a dent on global poverty, right? And as I grew in various ways, including my own, like, experiences, I've also felt like, yeah, you can do that, and I will continue on that path. But there are also these other things that show up, which is I actually want to make the whole product management practice more purposeful, right? As more and more product managers are purposeful, not in just their lives, but in their product management, the impact can be much more amplified, right? Tomorrow, let's say you're going to go work, for a company. The way you build product, if you think about customers and minimizing harm and maximizing positive value for them, the impact you'll have on people's security and tracking and all of that's going to be great. it doesn't align to my original purpose of putting a dent on global poverty or improving people's financial wellness, but it is making a difference in a lot of people's lives. So for me now, the amplified purpose is how can I amplify impact through others, right? And because before it was just about me, now it was about how do you amplify your purpose or other people's purposes. So it definitely changed, and I anticipate this change to
Right. Yeah.
keep
It's like
evolving
change
over
is
the
the
years.
only constant you can see in your life.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, exactly. And we need to embrace it, right? Because we can't stick to, oh, this is my purpose. Then you're not doing service to yourself by
Very true,
listening to
very true.
yourself and the world.
And talking about product management and your purpose, I think like you spent like a better half of a decade, at PayPal, which is a financial services company directly related to your purpose. So how has it been like, working in a financial services company and especially in the product management field? Like, there's so much like literature, so many people talking about product management in general, but specifically for financial services, how has product management been? I'd love to know your experiences.
Yeah. So I think product management is a function, and I feel like all that people talk about or introduce, all the books, thought leaders, newsletters,
All right.
everything, like are tools in your toolkit, right? But it's the craftsperson who figures out which tool to use when,
Right.
right? Or think about like the artist, right? You might have multiple paint brushes, but which paintbrush to use on which canvas, like, and all of that
Right.
is going to be dependent on the artist. You could give two craftspeople the exact same tools, but what they do with it is going to be different. One person might create a beautiful canvas art, another person might be the beautiful
Right.
create the most beautiful sculpture. Similarly, it's about product management practices are the same, but how I and we all apply it in financial services might be slightly different from how you apply it to what do you say, education
Right.
and things like that, and that is up to us. So the biggest thing that's helped for me in how I took product management best practices into financial services is really around the whole concept of discovery, right? And discovery was the biggest asset for me because it helped me learn from people how they manage their financial
Right.
lives and what was getting in their way to improve their financial wellness. And I have been able to apply that not just to people like you and me, but also people and across many dimensions. And these dimensions could be income, age, gender or non-gender, like all of those dimensions. And that's helped me gain a lot of understanding about people as a whole and what can be really helpful in
Right.
building the right
And I
products for
think
them.
like always discovery is the hardest part of product management. And I think that especially one because like humans are not like logical creatures. You can't predict what they're going to do next and you never know what like human trends are going to
Yeah.
be. So how did like I feel like this is like an ambiguous like part of product management. It's not like direct science or logic through which you can, get insights. So how do you go
Yeah.
about discovery in general?
Yeah, so for me, it's
Right,
about how do you
right,
develop your intuition? That's it, right? Like, not everybody is Steve Jobs, right? Can be
right.
naturally having that kind of intuition. For most of us, we have to develop that intuition because you have to imagine a future that no customer has imagined yet at all. All they can
Correct.
talk about is what's limiting them. And sometimes we also have to think about customers end up having what do you call, they also gain apathy, meaning, oh, this is how life is. For example, if you go to Mexico or India, for example, we all are used to
Correct.
waiting in lines. We never think about actually solving that as a problem. And if you sat down
Right.
with a customer, they will never tell you that waiting in line has been a problem for them. They will talk about all of these other
True.
problems,
Very
but they
true.
will not mention waiting in line, right? So it's also about understanding not just problems that customers are experiencing, but also problems that they have accepted as way of life. And then for me, discovery is again a set of tools, right? It's about first developing your own knowledge about the foundation. For example, when I started learning about financial services, it would have been wrong if I jumped to conclusions and go narrow down and interviewed people
Right.
about how do you make your bill
Right.
payments. right? That is too narrow. So you always have to start broad, and first you have to educate yourself in what it means to be in the financial services sector or for education. And you can talk about education too, right? Um, as you think about the next education product you want to build, are you going to start building it, or are you going to first develop your intuition? The way I recommend is do your foundational research first, and there are going to be a lot of desk research you can do. People would have published articles about it, people would have written about their own experiences. There are companies that would have done large scale research and published papers, right? There would be books on it. Go talk to thought leaders in this space. Like when I started in financial services, I sat down with a couple of other authors. I read a bunch of books and published papers by large organizations like World Economic Forum and all of them, Aspen Institute and all of them, and learn from it to even develop my hypothesis. And once you have your hypothesis, and you don't do this individually, right? You do it as groups and teams. And as a cross-functional team, once you develop it, then it's a matter of how are you going to learn? Are you going to just interview customers, or are you going to do more holistic? So I've learned from some of the best thought leaders in discovery, and what they've helped me learn is you have to learn holistically about the customer. So for me, it is about what are you learning from the customers? What are you learning about their context? Meaning you have to observe the neighborhoods they live in, how they do, things like that. You have to learn from their activity. Meaning if somebody said they went to this grocery store and bought groceries like this, it would be great if we did it on our own. That way you're observing and feeling how they did, right? You're walking in their shoes. Then you'll also have to talk to experts. Like for example, maybe there is a grocery store chain leader who can talk to you about trends about what groceries are being sold in the in that particular community. And in terms of financial services, talk to nonprofits who are helping improve savings behaviors of people, things like that. So I do more well-rounded discovery like that.
Okay.
But then that's only problem discovery, right? You're developing the intuition of people's lives. But then the place where most people fall off is they'll hear one problem and they'll be like, oh, that's a problem I'm going to solve, and start jumping to brainstorming, because as humans, we love ideating. And in that, we miss the most important part. The most important part is what's really called distillation. It's distilling from the tons of knowledge you've gained into start writing down, well, what are the problem statements? What are the opportunities for the business? And what are the relevant opportunities you should pick in your business? And then you narrow down those, and then you start ideating. So it's a group of that. But then the other thing that people do also is discovery. They think is like this big task you do, a project you do, and then you don't have to do anything for a couple of years. But that's not it, right? And Teresa Torres talks about this quite a bit. It's continuous discovery. How do you like continuously iteratively learn? And as you move past this, how are you learning about from your, let's say, your app reviews? What are people talking about your product online? Are they calling your customer service with issues? Is your data telling you anything? And is your ongoing user research telling you something? So you have to continue to learn through discovery, because discovery is never done. I can never call myself as the expert in financial services. What I can say is I'm a continuous learner, and I have some subject matter expertise in this area.
Yeah, I think that's really
helpful?
helpful. And I'd love to get like an example here, right? Like especially like in the financial services domain, like what are some like customer insights that like you felt like intuitively were not true, but like when you saw it, like observed it or spoke to customers, you were like, hey, like this is actually true.
Okay, you're going the other way. Because generally what happens is we all go with the intuitively this is true, and then we find them to be false. Right? But I can tell you a couple of things, right? And this is very generic, and this is not related to my work only, right? We think as humans, right? As humans, we all know we need to save money. Just like we know we need to eat healthy and exercise and all of that, right? And the general tendency for companies or people to think is, let's say you have a friend who doesn't have a lot of savings. It's natural for you to think, oh, they're just bad at saving or low income or whatever, right? But actually, when we dug deep, what you really find is savings is not a savings problem. Savings is a spending problem,
Right.
or savings is an
Right.
income problem. By that, what I mean is lack of savings doesn't happen because you are not saving. It happens because you're ending up spending all of your money
Right.
as soon as you get your income, or you're not even making enough to make ends meet. So it becomes actually a behavioral issue. And a lot of people end up, what we found was a lot of people end up struggling with, oh, I don't even make enough money, so I
Right.
don't even think I can save. But there was this company, I don't know where this company right now, but there's this company founded out
Okay.
of Stanford University called Juntos, Juntos. Juntos actually created some behavioral hacks, if you will, to help an average employee, like even who was making $50,000 a year,
Oh wow.
save up to $2,000 a year, right? And in the high
Right.
expense neighborhoods as well. So they've proven that it's not about just how much money you make, it's about the behaviors that you can hack for yourself. So what we found some people do was when they got their first income, they were
Right.
paying themselves first, which means it is their savings. So you would put away like $100 at the very beginning, and then you're limiting the amount of money you can even spend. So that means your spending, you will fit within the budget you have. But if you expanded that to include the savings money too, then, and you think, oh, whatever is remaining at the end of the month, then that I will save, then you deprioritize that. So things like that have worked. Things like
Right.
automating savings has worked. We've also noticed people how they will save money in a bank account that they will forget the
Oh wow.
password
Okay.
for on purpose, or they will save it with family members that
Right.
they don't have a good relationship with. And all this means is they were creating friction for themselves from depleting their savings. These are all behaviors that we found that was insightful. And then what you end up thinking about is, oh, actually, to build a savings habit is a lot more than
Right.
offering a savings product, right? That's what an
Right.
example I can share that's more generic.
But yeah, I think like that is very helpful, like especially the friction part, like I've seen a lot of friends do it, so yeah, definitely. And I think the next thing I want to talk about is like when you think about say you're trying to find a problem to solve, you get the relevant customer insight data and you distill it. When you think about building a new feature, generally what happens is like you generally see your competitors doing it, like building a similar kind of feature, and most of the times like it's very easy or low friction to just copy your competitor. So how do you make sure with your team to not copy your competitor and actually put in the work to build a feature that like delivers value to your customer and which is unique and authentic to your product?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very
Right,
common, by the way,
exactly.
right? It's a human nature. It's not just for
Yeah,
companies or teams; it's individuals too. Like and individuals also tend to see somebody do something, and you feel like,
correct.
oh,
Yep.
that's working. I should do that too. Let's say somebody's going to like a well-renowned university. It's natural, and then
Right,
ended up landing a great job, right? Then you think, oh, going through that university
right.
is going to help you land that job. But what you miss is that actually you don't know what else they've done. You don't know if they've actually done additional learning, and maybe the university that they went to actually
Right,
delayed their success. You don't know that. And the whole thing saying is when you look at competition, you can observe because you want to be conscious. But if you focus on competition to gain product insights, that's actually going to be a failure because you don't know if their customer base and your customer base are the same. You don't know what problems they're solving. And by the way,
right.
you don't
That's
even know if the product's succeeding. Even if you looked at that earnings report, can you actually tell? They might say, let's say, 1 million users are using that product. Great. But did they divulge whether the million people using it have actually created a
right.
net positive revenue for the company, or have they avoided saying it? Right? We don't know that. The other thing we don't know also is you
Right,
can't look at individual product. Does that product actually help a
right.
bigger goal for the company? And are we missing that bigger goal and all of these adjacent products you need? And did you just copy one product? Like all of that actually
Right.
will create a disaster for us. And Porter talks a lot about it, right? Porter talks about it in
Right.
the five forces of strategy, right? It talks about how you can't look at competition. If you copy competition, that's a sure way to kill your product. What you could do, right? Look, in this environment, it's also
Right.
we can be idealistic, right? Sometimes all of us get guidance saying we have to assess the competition. Let's go build that product. The best thing we can come back as product managers is actually do a good due diligence to say, okay, compare your competitors and their products, but go deeper and see what customers are they solving, what problems do you think they're solving, do you think the customer problem they're attempting to solve is actually being met. And sometimes you could also do customer research, and in your customer research you can talk to your own customers, but you can also talk to customers who might have used your competitor products to actually understand, is that a relevant product for them. Because a lot of people and product managers and companies can start at different stages. You can start with the customer, you can start with the customer problem, you can start with the product
Right.
idea, you can start with the technology. But wherever you start, instead of judging whether it's right or wrong, go back to your basics and say, okay, competitor X is doing this amazing, what do you call, um, whatever, right? Like, really nice
Right.
haptics that show up in the app. That could be the product. Great. Now apply that to our customers and say, does that really solve a problem for our customers? Prototype it with the customers to see if it's actually making a difference. Experiment to see if it's making a difference. And then once you have the data that actually that idea will work, then do it. But don't just jump and copy just because it seems to be working for a competitor. And the same thing is
That
relevant
is
for
true.
personal life too, by the way.
Yes.
Right? And there's a common, a saying they say, right? Don't compare your insights with
Very
other
true.
people's outsides, right? Like meaning don't compare what's going on in here to something else that people are
That is true.
showing
That is
on
true.
social media.
I think like one of my major learnings, like over the past 1.5 year as a grad student, where I've learned more about product management, is I constantly keep trying to compare it with my personal life. I'm like, hey, this is like useful in my personal life as well. So yeah, that is for sure. And when
Yeah.
you like, as you said, right, like first there's like the problem discovery phase. You distill the problems you want to solve. Then you brainstorm ideas and you start experimenting, and then start building features and products. One of the things that you've constantly been talking about is making sure like the products you build don't cause any harm. So how do you do this? Because like when I, as an early career product manager, also think about building products and stuff, I'm like, hey, you get the business goals and you try to connect it with customer problems, and then like that's like match made in heaven, and you've done your job as a product manager. What is that additional thing you have to make sure that, hey, like your product is not doing harm to your customers?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. And not just harm, right? It's more broader. You could be thinking about building your
Right.
product for one particular use case or one customer or problem, but sometimes your product could be
True.
used in various different ways. As an example, right? Netflix was created for one person to watch at a time. But what
Right.
ended up happening is, password sharing, right? People would share because family members were sharing. During the pandemic, we were doing watch parties, right? People were joining from multiple places and trying to
Right.
navigate to the
Yeah.
exact point where the movie starts, and both hit
True.
start at the same time to start the movie. Right? All of this just shows that the product could be used in more ways than you imagine. So one of the biggest things the product manager has to do after launching a product is to understand all the ways
Right.
that your product is being used. And as you do that, you also pay attention to other harmful ways that they're using it for, right? And because positives will give
Right.
you more use cases to build your product, negatives will help you contain it. As a classic example, I don't know if you read the book Hooked or Indistractable, but Neil Ryle talks a lot about this, right? Neil Ryle first wrote the book Hooked to talk about how do you build habit forming products. And when he wrote about it, every product manager wants to use it, right? Which is, we want customers to
Right.
engage with our products on a daily basis. And to the most part, our products are normal, highly engaged customers. It won't cause harm. Like if you logged into Life 360 every day, it's not going to be harmful for anybody. But imagine imagine you using a fitness tracker, and fitness tracker is constantly nudging you to
Correct.
do this extra 200 steps or extra 500 steps. It is supposed to be positive. What harm can it be? But then by paying attention, what you figure out is it could create the dopamine rush that people get. And I know that, I think Neer was talking about this one woman who was ready to go to bed, but the tracker was giving her some nudges. And then before she know it, another 3 hours late into the night, she's going up and down the stairs
Right.
just to meet those step count. Now that is where it
Right.
starts getting into the health issues, right? So you could have said, "Oh yeah, this woman's amazing. She's got 20,000 steps today. Great success for the product, in your opinion." But you haven't looked at the other outcomes or the side outcomes or the harmful effects it could have. So you should pay attention to that. So that's why a lot of people also say, good product leaders also say, a product manager is the
Right.
biggest evangelist for the product, which means you're always talking about the product, but also you're always thinking if the product is being used in the right ways. And it's not complicated. As a product manager, you can assess yourself a few things. Microsoft has done some amazing work on harms modeling. I would highly recommend
Correct.
you read that and think about it. But simple questions you can ask. For example, you can ask yourself, who are you building this product for? And your product you could say, I'm building this product for 25 to 40-year olds. And then you can think about, what income level are you thinking about? Is it relevant for, is it relevant? Does it change for genders and things like that? Once you have that, you also have to think about, who is
Right.
this product not relevant for? Let's say you're creating a SAT prep course. Now, you can think the SAT prep course is mostly relevant for high school students and maybe slightly older kids. In that case, you can easily safely assume, okay, maybe it's not relevant for much, much older people, like retired people. You could think that, right? In that case, it's okay not to think about all dimensions. But in the case when you're thinking about, um,
Right.
let's say a ticketing system, you're creating a ticketing system for people to go visit a museum. If you don't think about, let's say, much older people, then, and you expect people to stay in line for an hour and a half, then you're actually creating harm for, like, let's say my mother, who's in her 70s, and her knees are really bad, and you expect her
Right.
to stay in line for an hour and a half. So basically, you have to think about, who's your product relevant for, and by that, are you actually excluding people by mistake? Can you be non-exclusive so that you can
Right.
be more inclusive of more people? And the way you're shaping it, would you potentially create physical, financial, mental, or any kinds of harm to other people the way you do that? So applying that harms modeling, simple questions, it's a set of 10 questions or so. I actually have an article on it too on my newsletter. You can read that too. Asking a set of simple questions can help you figure out, can I minimize harm and maximize value for the
Got it.
customers?
But what about like products, like as you said, right? You never know how people would use the product that you've released. So like take like social media apps for example. In the beginning, these were products that intended no harm. It was just to connect people that lived far away or close by. But now, like, like with so much like social media addiction, where like most of the people are spending most of their times on phones, and that is really required for like the business of these companies. Like, how does this whole thing work there?
Yeah. So look, it's very easy for us to say, oh,
Right.
apply Hams modeling and your products will be great, right? It's not that. Because if it were that simple, everything would have been great. Now that I think that kind of ethical
Right.
product management thinking or ethical businesses needs to happen throughout the business. For example, when the original social media products were created, it actually created a lot of immense value. It probably helped you find your high school friend you've
Correct.
lost touch in 30 years back. It helped my mom connect to her friends from like 50 years back. It's all of like good things. But then you have to apply the same kind of thinking to every aspect of it, which is what kind of content are you propagating? Can you control user generated content? Look, I as an individual or a company cannot
Right.
control what you post, but should we? Right? You have to think about that. And then it goes beyond businesses
Right.
too. It's about regulations, it's about expectations, it's about all of that too. So that's why it's not an easy answer, but it's a more complicated question about how can each and every individual and each and every team in the PDLC need to think about it. Can your marketing strategies also need to be minimizing harm, right? You don't want to market a high cost product to a low income customer for whom
Right.
it's actually not going to be valuable, right? So you have to think about that in every aspect of it. And then when you actually start finding that your products are causing harm, we should also have the courage to stop and say, okay, we are going to pivot. And that is also ethical businesses. It shouldn't
Right.
have to be for regulation and the government
Right.
to come behind us to stop the product. I think we can do a lot more proactively. And a lot of like companies are doing that so well these days, right? There's exemplary companies and CEOs who are talking about this kind of
Right.
thinking in their businesses. And then a lot more of expectations from society as well, from the communities as well, of people, not just employing, not just because you want a job there, but people expect a lot more out of
Right.
businesses these
Right.
days too.
So it's more about like like as individuals grow in their careers, they need to, keep thinking about this when in whatever work they're doing, so that it, showcases in their output of products as well. Right.
Yeah, it's every, I think it's said
Right.
differently, it's everybody
Right.
at every
Yeah.
stage needs to think about it. Because at certain levels, you might not be the decision maker, but
Right.
you can be the voice of the customer. And you can be the voice of the customer no matter what level
That
you
is true.
are and where you are in your career, right? And then you can and look, when a product manager becomes passionate about the customer, then they truly become the strong voice of the customer in the room. And it ends up happening that because you're the voice of the customer, you'll bring the data to show, you'll bring the right artifacts to show why certain things to be done certain way. And I think really good product leaders pay attention to these product managers. So you can't step away saying, oh, I'm in my early career, I don't have a
Right.
voice, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll try to do my little thing in my little space.
True.
You
Very
are the
true.
voice of the customer.
And I think the next part I want to talk about is, you've been a product leader for like so many years, and you've coached many product managers, you've led teams. Like, how do you run like high performance teams? I think like, it's very easy to say like, hey, like, all of them do stuff really well, but like to get like, say, even like 10 people who are highly performing together and get them to work on things collaboratively, how do you do that?
Yeah, so the there are a couple of key jobs of a product leader, right, which I often get missed. When when people first become managers of product managers, they think their job is to make sure that the products their product
Right.
managers are building are the right ones. Yes, yes, but it doesn't stop there. Your biggest job is to build a great product team. Your product is the product team. It's not the product that they create. I think I read this in the book named Multiplier. It opens the thing like that. A great manager makes you
Right.
realize how amazing they are. A great leader makes you realize how amazing you are. Right? Anytime you have a one-on-one with a good leader, you
Right.
walk away feeling how amazing you are. And that's not because they're faking it, but they're really finding how to amplify you and your strengths, right? So the couple of things good product leaders do. One is they make sure they're setting the vision and helping the
Right.
team be inspired by the vision. They're making sure the team is always solving for the customer and the business and at the intersection of the customer and the business. And then they're continuously helping the team unlock themselves, right? Basically coaching them, mentoring them, growing them, and all of that. Now, in that, some product leaders love hiring great PMs, but what does great PMs mean? right? For me, it's
Right.
all about mindset over skill set, right? It is, if you can get the people with the right mindset. For me, there are three key things for a great product mindset. The first one's about customer obsession, right? Are you continuously focused on the customer? It doesn't mean you talk about the customer or you talk to customers. It's not that, but it's a
Right.
different way of thinking and operating, right? In that mind, you always put the
Right.
customer at the center of everything you do. That's the first, right? The second that I look for is growth mindset. Like, are you willing, like, are you open to new ways of working, new ways of thinking, open to working with different kinds of people, like all of that? And are you continuously learning about yourself, learning about your customers, about your product, about like all aspects of growth? That way you're continuously growing. And the third thing is like servant leadership, right? Are you there to serve your customer first, then the company, then the team, and finally yourself? And that kind of thinking, those three are like key. If a lot of product managers already have the functional skill set and have this mindset, great. If not, it is also on product leaders to find such talent and groom them to be great product leaders, right? So I think what I found really work well is balance, of course, finding a balance of really great functional product managers who have the mindset, but also having some product managers with that mindset, even if they don't have that skill
Right.
set, to help them groom. And then direct them to the vision. The third and final thing I also do is I also, because I think about my team as a product, I also look at what are the improvements we can do, which is, are there skills that the team needs to learn? Are there skills I need to learn because that's a gap in me to be a better leader? Are there, what
Right.
do you call, frameworks that are missing? Are there minor processes that could improve efficiency? Right? Things like that is something that I need to have my backlog that I'm continuously working on. Are there things that I need to do to help bring visibility to an individual on the team or to a product on the team or things like that? And that's what I have to do. But all of this I have to do while not taking my foot off the gas and thinking
Right.
about product strategy continuously. Right? I have to spend time with the customers myself. I have to understand what it means to work with stakeholders. What do stakeholders need? How does it influence the product strategy? How does it? How does my product strategy connect to the rest of the organization? These are some of the things that I often talk about with peers and others, and
Wow,
how to run
that's
great
really
teams.
fascinating. And I'm sure that you'd have coached many PMs and especially a lot of early career PMs. And like, what are like some common mistakes do you think, or common thinkings that early career PMs have that they can change, or they can learn early on?
Yeah, so I think a lot of look PMs, at least for us, we never went to
Right.
any schools to learn product management, right? We learned it on the job, and as we are learning on the job, we are defining what that is. Today, a lot of aspiring PMs and early career PMs have a lot to learn from, right?
Right. Yep.
They probably have a little too much, right? Too many things to pick from. You don't know which philosophy to work, and then the product management discipline has too many philosophies too. But I think a lot of what I see happen is product managers often think that building the product right
Right.
is the most important thing. How are you writing your requirements? How are you working with your engineers? How are you instrumenting your data? Like all of that. A lot of PMs forget that there are two aspects of product management. First, are you building the right product? And then,
Right.
are you building the product right? A lot more people focus on the second part. But then it is like you can build the most beautiful house, but if it doesn't have the right architectural foundation and all the necessary things, it
Correct.
doesn't matter. It's not livable. Similarly, if you don't find the right problems to solve that translate into the right opportunities for your business, then you could be building a great product, but completely the wrong one. And that's what I hope PMs know, that don't just get carried away with executing, right? Executing on building, because actually execution makes us feel like progress. It's not. It's okay to slow down to speed up, which means it's okay to spend the time to ask the question, are you building the right product? Even if
Right.
it takes a few days longer before you start building. Because then you don't waste resources. Like, did you know that as a PM, you decide to spend thousands of dollars because you're prioritizing your entire engineering team sprint? In a sprint, depending on which country you are, you could be spending anywhere from
Right.
$5,000 to $100,000. As a PM, would you be able to spend $100,000 of your own personal money on that feature you're building for the next 2 weeks with your
Right.
team? If not, then you haven't spent the time in identifying whether the product's right. And that's important, right? So I encourage a lot of PMs to focus on learning that aspect of business, and then also connecting with, that means you're also connecting with, is your product that you're building connecting to the overall business goals and the company goals? Otherwise, you spend a year building an amazing product that looks awesome, but it's actually not usable. People are not going to use it, which means your company is not going to get the revenue it needs, which means you just wasted a whole year. So I think those are the things I would
Right.
encourage PMs to think about.
That's very fascinating. I think that is so true because, like, I have a lot of friends and myself included, like, we're starting our product management careers and we want to build the fancy products, but we often, forget or underestimate the time we need to put into understand if we're building the right products itself. So that is so true. And the last thing I want to talk about is, with the current situation, there's like there's like talks of recession, a lot of layoffs. Like, what are your general thoughts about the situation, and like, how should people think about this situation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact, right? We see every day, right? More and more businesses are shutting down, or layoffs happening, or things like that. It's a tough environment, and nobody can predict how long we're going to be in this tough environment, right? And I talk about this in the analogy of like my son's basketball team often, right? We say, like, sometimes you could be one of the best basketball players, or you could be one of the best product managers in our case,
Right.
but you could be sitting on the bench because you're playing in a team of much better players. So people could have been laid off, or you're not getting to work on the most important projects or whatever. But now's not the time to question why you're on the bench, or why you're not able to do better, or why you're not landing the job. Now's the time to double down on your efforts, because the only thing
Right.
you have control on is your efforts. You have no control on the outcome. So as long as you're continuing to add to your skill set, learn, like, learn, give back, and do things, you will land on your feet. Because, look, the
True.
market will open up at some point. Nobody knows when. It could be next week, it could be a year from now, it could be 5 years now. If all of us could predict it, we would all be in a better state. But whatever that time is, I would just encourage
Right.
everybody to be ready for that moment, right? How are you preparing yourself? That way you can land the best job you wanted. You can land a better job than you had, or you can start a business of your own, or whatever that is. But to be prepared, you need to put in the effort now. So don't worry
Right.
about the noises right now. Just focus, heads down, learn, apply. But at the same time, look, we can also not give this advice in vacuum. There are people for
Yeah.
whom life is hard, right? It is tough, right? I mean, people who are losing their jobs and have to leave a
Right.
country that they're residing in right now. It's going to be hard to uproot themselves and go back wherever they are from. People, everybody in a family losing their jobs and being hard to meet their basic needs. That's also reality. Now, all I can say is, I know it's a hard time. Make sure you reach out for help and hang in there, because it will turn around, right? Just keep doing the hustle, keep hustling, keep working hard. Things will come around. But we have to acknowledge that everybody is at a different
Right.
level of hardship at this point, and whoever is not facing that should have higher levels of empathy, which means tip a little more at the restaurant, or prepay somebody, or help others by giving a free session,
Right.
teach them something it's all like all of us have to
That
be
is
in
true.
this together to help each other.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Prashanti. Like, I think this was a wonderful conversation. I didn't feel like an hour passed by, but yeah, this has been so great. Thank you so much.